access to equity funds that was owed them for the work that they were doing. I support the fact of bringing that particular model into our community. I mean, I give kudos to Brownsville Partnership for what they do now with their farmers market, but I do think we need to encourage more minorities getting involved in that process. I also encourage the relationship of working directly with our bodegas to ensure that they are putting quality stuff on our shelves. I walked into a bodega not too far from my house and found a Golden's mustard jar that was about 2 years old. So there is an issue with that, and I look forward to working with the Bodega Association as well as our retail organizations to ensure that we are able to get the fresh produce in our communities so that we're not eating craziness like opening up a peppermint patty or peanut butter, Reese's peanut butter cups, finding worms and things of that nature. We have to be due diligent, and you have to be very mindful of who's opening up shops here.
Panel. Wilford, what's your take?
One of the things that I've learned at a very early age is that knowledge is power. And when we begin to provide people with knowledge and resources, we do better. So one of the things that I worked on this year is with the New York Mission Society in Brownsville Academy High School. One of the first programs that we are working with is to take greenhouses and to take farmers markets and pair them with local high schools so that families and young adults can work together to learn the importance of healthy eating, what to look for when they go into their grocery stores, because not a lot of people do. We're not taught the practices of healthy eating a lot in our culture. So one of the first things is knowledge. Also, to work with state-funded programs. I know SNAP has a program where they have health bucks, but that's only for a certain amount of months. What do residents do throughout the rest of the year where they can't get access to those programs? So one of the things that I want to work on with this initiative in New York Mission Society is to, on the state level, increase programs like that and bring more green programs throughout all of the schools in our district.
Moving right along, Laurie Boozer, what's your take?
So one of the things that we have to acknowledge is that this district is considered a food desert. So that means that essentially we are at a nutritional deficit in comparison to many other parts of New York City. And so we have a large task at hand in terms of making sure that we do two things, and that is to educate our community about the benefit of proper nutrition. My grandmother grew up in the South, and she grew up eating sweet potatoes from her own garden, and she is 91 years old. There is a drastic difference between her health and the health of many of the people that we see here today. So it does start with education, but it also starts with understanding the supply and demand as well as the supply chain and where the food is coming from. And we have to understand that in certain communities, our supermarkets, depending on the type of supermarket or the owner of the supermarket, don't always get access to the quality of produce that we need in order to serve our community's healthy produce. We want to make sure that we're capitalizing off of our farmers markets, utilizing them to help with the educational process, but partnering our farmers markets and asking our supermarkets to maybe carry some of their produce on their shelves as well.
What's your response to this question? Teach Walker.
To also add that when you do this type, when bodegas offer unhealthy goods in our communities, like the other day my nephew bought a can of something that actually did have worms in it. And when that happens, there needs to be a penalty for that type of work. And one of the things that I know, once we do something like that, maybe it will encourage them not to do it anymore, not to stock their shelves with those types of goods. So I would also look at working in situations where the agricultural law also takes into consideration the fact that when our local business owners are conducting themselves in an occasion or a fashion that is unhealthy to our communities, that we do what we can do in order to make them and hold them accountable for it as well.
All right. This is a long statement before the question. So here we go. From basketball tournaments to alternative fitness camps to dance and skateboard groups, the 55th District has many community-based organizations, ministries, and nonprofits that provide direct services for the residents from their passion to help, but they often do so at a financial loss. The missing link for many initiatives in your community is a field of robust nonprofits and economic development corporations. And while members of the New York State Assembly no longer have the ability to fund community-based organizations, they are able to leverage relations to garner support for the community-based organizations that directly provide services to their constituents. Here's a question. What are your plans to support new and existing community-based organizations in their nonprofit endeavors to build a better?
I remember going to a CB16 meeting, and one of the things that I stood before the members and the audience and I said was strategic partnership. Now, I know you heard me talk a lot about that today, and that's because that's my background, strategic partnerships. We don't need to keep requesting the same funding. There are so many community-based organizations whose missions are similar, and one of the initiatives that I want to encourage and support and educate them is coming together and creating programs that's long-lasting. Now, I know the state doesn't have membership items, and this is something that I mentioned earlier. I am endorsed by our council member. I am endorsed by our borough president. I am endorsed by 2 state senators. I'm the only candidate that is endorsed by members that have actually a stake in our district. So coming together with them, I've sat down to the table and laid out plans. And a lot of what I've said to you tonight were programs that I am already working on, not just ones that I want to create when I get to Albany, ones that I want to extend that I'm already working on. And that's with our borough president. And just utilizing those partnerships. We talk about strong coalitions, but now is the time to come together with a candidate who's actually endorsed by all of these individuals to say, hey, listen, I am working with this community-based organization. Now we need your support, and now we need your support, and we need your leverage on the city level. We need your support on the state level. It's about coming together. So I want to say again, I am the candidate that is going to work on existing programs that we are currently working on, not ones that we're going to get to Albany and create, so that I will go and hit the ground running. These are things that I want to work on. If somebody's going to get into office, they have to not just work with members outside of our district or people upstate and state and federal, but they're local politicians. That's what we need in this community. For too long, we have had this seat be separate, and we need to, it's time for us to come together for strategic partnership, and that's what I plan on doing.
You're a proponent of going to Albany and advocating for the restoration of member item funding, obviously with greater controls to ensure that the corrupt culture that caused us to lose the member item funding doesn't take over, but I do think that there is some benefit as an assembly member to have access to direct resources that you can give to the community. But in terms of the nonprofits, I've actually worked as a consultant for a number of different nonprofits, and a part of the process that I've done is engage in strategic planning and building coalitions. I've completed 2 fellowships here in the city that have also worked with building coalitions across Brooklyn. And in order to implement these things, we need to build partnership, but we need to build partnership with effective elected officials. And I am not endorsed by the political establishment, because the reality is that they have failed and they have been incapable of forming the partnerships that we need in order to move the community forward. So in order to make this work, I propose using an organizing model here in the district, making sure that we're pairing organizations with complementary agendas, getting them on the same page, and using that model to move forward the agenda for the community.
That there has to be some funding mechanism put in place, because the community-based organizations are where we derive our energies from. Oftentimes what we find is that they're not getting the education that they need in order to be able to qualify for some of the 501c3 grants that exist out here. It is my pledge to be able to put them in that position to hold workshops to ensure that these not-for-profits have their documentation and paperwork in order so that they can qualify. I think a lot of excuses from a lot of the existing electeds is, the first question is, does the 501c3 exist? Well, 9 times out of 10, the paperwork isn't done. They don't have the proper amount of people or executives on their board. So we have to encourage that kind of a structure. But also in identifying ways to bring money in and using the marketing background that I have and working for a corporation of minority-owned business owners, I do pledge to present my own package of events and activities that will afford me the opportunity to get corporate sponsorship to come into our community, so we can utilize those funds to support a person like a Crystal Green, the Movement of Jaguars, to support Anthony Newells and the Brooklyn Blizzards. Those are the kind of programs that need to be supported, and that's what I would do. We need to provide investors with tax incentives that will afford them an opportunity to hire within. That's the first thing we need to do, to draw them in to make sure that they're hiring our talent. We have a lot of talent coming particularly out of our housing developments, and particularly out of the streets that exist here in the 55th Assembly District. Not just Brownsville, but also alongside that of the Bushwick Corridor where Broadway is, where I live at that border for the most part, and see the bodegas and the small restaurants that are there that are having issues that are being set upon by city issues. With that being said, again, to get those investors, we have to make sure, to ensure that we have the proper funding in place that they see is viable enough for our community.
I think it's a great idea to a degree, but I think we also want to be careful because what we don't want is a Walmart, or we don't want an entity coming into the community with significant private investment, but that is also detrimental to our small businesses here, as well as not paying wages that are livable to people that they might employ in the community. So I think it's a balance. As an elected official, we do have some ability to secure private investments, but again, we also don't want to be beholden to private investors. So I would again focus on taxing the wealthy. I would support increasing the tax on the 1% and making sure that that is our private investment and that that money comes into our communities, and also making sure that we continue to support our local businesses and our small businesses. But I think that the increased tax revenue, taxing banks that have had corporate welfare for decades, is the private investment that we need to be advocating to come into our communities.
I want to be careful about encouraging private investment into our community because that's exactly what happened with that foreclosure crisis. But one thing I will say that I will be committed to is show your small businesses just how government can work for you. How can micro-lending opportunities or other lending and MWBE loan or grant programs can be utilized in order to leverage the type of funding that you need to go and get that type of investment on your own, as opposed to me saying a private investor come into our community and do what we need to do when we can do it already. So that's one of the things that I will definitely remain committed to doing. But another one that I would definitely say that we need to do is to really encourage our local chambers of commerce to look into our community and think about it as something that they would mind coming into. One of the things that we did with the community board, we looked at other different companies and said, why don't you come over to Pickett Avenue? But they said we were having our clothing being sold out on the streets. So they didn't want that. They weren't interested in accepting our culture and our neighborhood in terms of how we shop. So I would be very careful about the private investment, but I will definitely do what I need to do in order to help bolster the small businesses to go and get money on their own.
I think that we are all in sync with as regards to the chambers. Fortunately, I'm endorsed by 16 of them. And having had the experience of working collectively with the African American International Chamber and now with the Hispanic American International Chamber, those are the things that we look forward to, the opportunity of actually partnering not only with the Pickett Avenue bid, but also with community partners. You have to make sure that our churches are engaged in the process. We need to be sitting with the pastors in our churches and being in a position to afford them an opportunity to be at the table so we can have the negotiations necessary to get them engaged and get the members of their churches and congregations involved in that process so that they can become our future business owners as well.
Choice for children in this district due to the increase in charter schools. The increase in choice and co-location of schools has created a dichotomy in the quality of education. Question: what will you do to ensure equitable schooling for every child in this community to prepare them for college, careers, and their life ahead of them?
This is a question that I hold dear to me because, again, I am director for youth programming and I am the district director working with many of our principals inside of our schools. And one of the things that we see is there's not enough vocational training and programming in schools. Students are not being prepared for the real world. They're not leaving with the tools that's necessary for them to go out prepared. So we need to create more readiness programs. The only way we can do that is if we fight on the state level for more funding. Also, a lot of our public schools are suffering because charter schools are great. Some parents actually like charter schools, and we can't take away from what they provide to certain parents, but our public schools are also losing out because there is not enough funding on the state level. So we need to go to Albany, and we need to fight to get more resource centers there for not just the students, but the parents as well. More training programs, but all of this has to be done at Albany to create a bill or look at existing ones to say how can we put more funding into our schools. Another thing is, again, college readiness programs. We don't want to just prepare them to go to college. A lot of our young adults and our young men, they don't want to just go to college programs, but they want to know also that they can leave high school with a job. So if we can get money from the state to put these resources centers in our schools and not send our children all over the district and leave them responsible for their own lives while they're so young, and we need to have direction for them. And by placing this funding in schools, we can do that.
Due to the increase in charter schools, the increase in choice and the co-location of schools has created a dichotomy in the quality of education. What will you do to ensure equitable schooling for every child in this community to prepare them for college, careers, and their life ahead?
Separate is not equal, and that applies to the dichotomy that we see between both public schools and charter schools here in the district. The reality is that charter schools are here. I think we need to acknowledge that. For some parents, they see charter schools as the solution, but charter schools also have different leeway than a public school, so they can retain the best and brightest students, they can remove students from their schools. All of them are things that public schools don't necessarily have to deal with. So in order to go to Albany and help improve public school education, we don't have to fight. We need to make sure that the lawsuit that occurred between the Campaign for Fiscal Equity and New York several years ago is that funding that was supposed to come into our districts actually comes into our districts. So a lot of that funding has gone to wealthier school districts, but under that lawsuit, we as a disadvantaged community were supposed to receive a chunk of that funding, and that's what we need to advocate for in Albany. Making sure that that funding goes to providing stronger vocational training, making sure we have after-school programs that are geared specifically to helping improve the quality of life of our young people here. And I think that that's what we need to do to improve school choice for our community.
It's interesting when I hear people talk about Campaign for Fiscal Equity, because as an attorney and as a student, I was a part of that Campaign for Fiscal Equity lawsuit. And what it says is that the state of New York owes our schools $7 billion. And to date, they've only given $2 billion. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going up to Albany to cash a check. Hello? And when I do that, how am I going to get that done? But right now, since Campaign for Fiscal Equity has not been adhered to, there's another lawsuit that's called Maisto versus State. And as an attorney first, but also as an assemblywoman, I am going to join in that lawsuit to make sure that the 55th Assembly District gets what it needs and it's on the record. So we're not talking about rhetoric here. I'm going up in here, I'm going to file a Mrs. Briefs, and we're going to do what we need to do to make sure that schools just like PS 178 can produce more attorneys, more doctors, more architects, and just like any other school across the state of New York. So that's my...
That there has to be some funding mechanism put in place, because the community-based organizations are where we derive our energies from. Oftentimes what we find is that they're not getting the education that they need in order to be able to qualify for some of the 501c3 grants that exist out there. It is my pledge to be able to put them in that position to hold workshops to ensure that these not-for-profits have good documentation and paperwork in order so that they can qualify. I think a lot of excuses from a lot of the existing electeds is, the first question is, does the 501c3 exist? Well, 9 times out of 10, the paperwork isn't done. They don't have the proper amount of people or executives on their board. So we have to encourage that kind of a structure. But also in identifying ways to bring money in and using the marketing background that I have and working for a corporation of minority-owned business owners, I do pledge to present my own package of events and activities that will afford me the opportunity to get corporate sponsorship to come into our community so we can utilize those funds to support a person like a Crystal Green, the Mobile Jaguars, to support Anthony Newells and the Brooklyn Blizzards. Those are the kind of programs that need to be supported, and that's what I would do.
Going into the seat in Albany, this is a vacant seat, which means that there's a lot of work to be done. So if we don't think that we need to go in working with our elected officials, we're absolutely incorrect. We won't get nothing done. We'll have the same thing perpetuated over and over again that we have had many years ago. So it is important that we go in there and we work with all of our elected officials in our area. Also, I've worked with our legislative assistants throughout the year. And throughout months, this was a long budgeting process, but it was an easier one because we taught local community-based organizations how to effectively apply for funding. And I know many of you have heard me make those announcements and talk to you about this in our community board 16 meetings. And a lot of organizations who didn't get funding before or who didn't know how to do it, they did it this year because I held those clinics and I brought the education and the resources to them and taught them how to go and get the money. So when we go to Albany, that's what I plan to do as well. Teach them how to go and get the money and create strong collaborations. Thank you.
Again, we want to thank the 500 men making a difference. Raise your hands if you're in the room. Let's give them a round of applause. And the coalition of young professionals. Now I know that we did not open the floor for questions, but we do have one question from a member of the audience, from the organization from the Community Council School District 23. So I shall ask that question. And Lori, it's your turn. Okay. What are your views on mayoral control of the New York City Department of Education? And what policies will you put into place to improve the quality of education for the students of Community District 23? Am I doing something wrong? Let us thank our candidates for answering our questions. You've got a real job ahead of you next week. But I think some of you made your minds up tonight, huh? You see some hands, some heads doing this, and other heads doing nothing, which means that they made up their minds before. But I'm sure that you all are going to do the right thing, and that is what?
Our dilemma in this 55th district, by putting in the work and getting things done, you know, which is Latrice Walker, I feel that she will do the best job ever, better than anyone else who have never really been out here fighting for the people. She's been fighting for the people since she was a little girl. She's born and raised here. Right now, she does legal work for a lot of the young people that can't afford a lawyer. So I want to see who else is doing that. Lori Bozo ain't doing it. She's never been out here. Never been out here in marches and rallies when we fight, marching against violence, marching against all the things that we need, housing and getting this park fixed and everything. She's never here. Tony Harvard was never here at the fight for us. Anthony Jones was never here. Aisha was never here. Latrice was here, and she's still here, and she's still fighting for all the things. I could call her at any given time, and she would come out and stand with us instead of standing with the people. She don't play politics with this. She stand on the right side, the people's side, and she's fighting for the people. So when she get in there, she will be fighting for the people.
Well, Marcus have made this perfectly clear. Latrice Walker is his candidate.
No, it's the people's candidate, because the people called her out and told her to run for this seat. The people of Brownsville, the people of this community, not the unions, not the corporations. It's the people that asked Latrice to run. That's why the budget that she's running on, she don't even have enough money, but guess what? The people gonna put her in there. It's not about the money. It's about what the people want. The people want change. And she will give the people change.
You hearing this? This is the objective opinion, and this is Marcus.
That's
One
right.
to grow on. OJ Opinion. Peace.
The development of Brownsville. Let's be realistic. Marcus Garvey told the people that they should pack their bags. Remove yourself from your oppressor. Move on to a better life. This was over 40 years ago. 40 or 50. And to today, Afro-Americans are still denied and deprived the social justice that they seek in a society governed and controlled by an elite faction, who has repeatedly left them in the dark, thereby now leaving themselves in such seclusion. Where will Brownsville go tomorrow? True to the very essence of what Brownsville will become. It has been slated for the future. The writing is clearly written on the wall. At what point do the citizens wake up and benefit their legacy within a community that they themselves develop?
In my community, that we will not be beneficial to ourselves until we provide for ourselves. Until we stand up and start supporting ourselves. Within our community, many other ethnic groups come in and benefit and grow from our very existence. We support them. We feed them. They use the same benefits that you use. Nevertheless, they use them against you. Today is the dawning of a new day. We should create and develop our own. We should no longer sit back and allow others to dictate how we do things in our community. This starts with you doing for you. And today I start that off with the objective opinion. So, as we are reviewing the election and the upcoming election, we need you to get involved. It's very important. Don't assess that your vote does not count, because now you're making a sad, terrible mistake. We have one too many cases where police brutality and violence and murder is taking a full toll on our community, slowly eliminating Afro-American males at an alarming present rate. This is something that we cannot ignore. I see a lot of politicians, they take the platform and they say, I am the first Afro-American to take this seat. Knowing well that the first Afro-American put you in that seat and that you was put there so that you may provide for the service for your community. Everybody else does it. What is the problem with the Afro-American? We should be able to provide and flourish just like anybody else in our community. And I'm not the first to say it, and I will not be the last. It has been said repeatedly from our ancestors, I don't know how many times, from Marcus Garvey on down the line. What is our problem? The time has come for us to stop killing ourselves and to start building ourselves. Rock the vote. The 55th Assembly is a very important seat. Do not take it lightly. Oh, and for the politicians that have chosen to take up that position, bear in mind that it is up to you to work collectively with your counterparts to achieve the objective that the community can benefit from. This is Objective Opinion. OJ, I got to go. Assalamu alaikum. Peace.